Well, I'm Sister Maria Gemma. I'm Vice President for Catholic Culture and Student Life here at USF, and I have been in that position since May. I've been a Franciscan for 17 years, so I made my perpetual profession in 2014, and then, now here I am.
I'm Sister Mary Joseph. I am the Assistant Director of St. Benedict the Moor. I also work in campus ministry. I've been a religious sister for 24 years. I made final vows in 2008, and I've been here on this campus since July.
And most of you know me. I'm Trish Bagayski. I am the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs and Director of the Graduate School. I've been here, this is my 19th year. I started as an adjunct in English, and I've been back and forth across both sides of the house. And I made my profession as a secular Franciscan in 2010. So it'll be 14 years in April. Would you like to start?
Yes. So just to share a little bit about my journey and my intro into being Franciscan, I grew up Catholic. I was raised Catholic. When my parents, when we were younger, were having some financial struggles, so we moved in with my grandparents. My grandma made us go to church. That was the rule. So ever since then, I went to Mass every Sunday, been a Catholic. And I didn't actually fall in love with Jesus, though, until high school. I went to Catholic schools, and I learned a lot about what God was and the rules and the sacraments and all of that. But I never actually met Jesus until my youth group in high school, when we were introduced to adoration. For those who aren't Catholic, it's we believe Jesus is present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist. And so the Eucharist is reserved in the tabernacle, which is the gold box in the back of the church. And then adoration is when we take Jesus out of the tabernacle and put him in this gold stand where we can see the Eucharist and see him face to face. That's what I'm referring to as adoration. So in high school, they would have time set aside for adoration, where they would have Jesus exposed in the monstrance, and we would have time for silent prayer, or we would have music. And that just really kind of led me into this reality that, well, Jesus is a person who wants to have a relationship with me. And that really changed the trajectory of my life after that. So when I went to college, I was trying to decide what I wanted to study. I loved learning. I still love learning. And I chose theology because my rationale at the time was, if I choose theology, God is infinite, and I'm never going to learn everything about him, so there's always going to be something more to learn. So that's why I picked theology, because I love learning and I love God, and why not learn more about God for the rest of my life? And then while I was in college, I actually went to a Dominican school, which, so Franciscan is one way of living the gospel in the Catholic Church. Another way is Dominican. There's many ways and many different what we call religious orders. The Dominican sisters were heavily present in the area where I grew up in Central Ohio. And so they were present at my grade school, and then I went to a college sponsored by Dominican sisters. And I fell in love with my faith even more so while I was at college, and while I was studying theology. As I was going through, the Dominican motto is to contemplate truth and to share the fruits of that contemplation. So I always like to joke and say I have a Dominican mind and a Franciscan heart, because I'm never going to get that part out of me. Like, I love the truth, I love studying truth, and I love sharing that with everyone I meet. So that's the part of me that's still a little bit Dominican. But as I was going through college, and I got to a point my junior year where I kind of had this realization that I had some tragedy at the beginning of college in my life that kind of put me on a diverted path from actually living out my faith, even though I never stopped studying it. But my junior year, I was home on Christmas break and realized I haven't been going to Mass at school. I don't really know like what my path forward is. And as I was laying in bed one night at Christmas time, I heard this like voice in my heart. It wasn't external, it was interior. Ask me two questions. Who are you and who do you want to be? And it was so profound. It moved me to the depth of my being that I realized I don't know who I am, but I know that I'm not who I want to be. And that gave me a real grace when I went back to school, started going back to church, went back to confession for the first time in a couple of years. And when I went back to confession, the first thing that I heard the Lord speak to me interiorly after I left the confessional was, have you ever considered religious life? And I was like, oh my gosh. I remembered my freshman year, I had a professor who asked me in a group of young women, he said to us, you're young women, you love your faith, you should at least consider religious life as a possibility. I remember at the time thinking, that's wild. No one's ever said that to me before. Not only that, the only sisters I know are old. I just like don't see that as a life for me, right? It just was like a reality. It wasn't something that I considered possible for my life. But as that came back to me and as I continued to pray and think about who the Lord was calling me to be, I realized if this is a call from him, I know that he is going to make me happy and that I cannot make myself happy. So I really ought to look into this more. So my first inclination was I'm going to go visit a Dominican convent because there are Dominicans around me. I did visit a Dominican convent, realized at that visit that I could see myself called to religious life. There were younger sisters there. First of all, they were talking and laughing, which you just don't know if you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. That they're actually human, shocking. And at that visit, yeah, I realized this is a beautiful life. This particular place does not feel like home to me. Like I knew I'm not staying here. But I did realize that I have to start looking at other religious communities. One of my friends at the time was in the seminary studying for the priesthood. And he asked me, what sets your heart on fire? This was the summer going into my senior year of college. He said, what sets your heart on fire? And I thought the first thing that came to my mind was St. Francis of Assisi. Like I want to live like him. That sets my heart on fire. I want to be so radically devoted to the Lord that he matters more than anything in my life. And I want to give everything for him. And it particularly came to me through St. Francis of Assisi. So then I went to visit our order because it was a Franciscan order. And before I even met one of the sisters, I drove onto our grounds and I just had this sense of peace and I felt like I was coming home. And when I met the sisters and was embraced, like one of the strengths of Franciscans is community spirit, family spirit, and joy. And it was so evident at our mother house when I met the sisters, it just was irresistible to me. And that was the Lord calling me through that. When I look back on it now, I really don't know what captured my heart so much about St. Francis as far as I didn't have education about him very much other than the typical learn about your saints. I had watched a movie about his life once, which I think just that's what it was rooted in. Like I saw this movie, I saw his radical embracing of Jesus in the gospel way, and I was captivated by it. And so, yeah, I think the Lord works in all of these different ways in our lives, and he gives us the graces we need at the time. And I think through those, even those little things, when you look at the course of your life, like this one movie or this one thing someone said, it can just really change the course of your life if the Lord is working in it and if the grace is there and if you respond to it. So I think my vocation in a way is kind of like St. Francis's in the way that he had a conversion and just wanted to radically abandon, like my life literally took a 180 in college back to the faith, and then I went all in religious life, and I'm still here, praise God, all that time later. Am I at 10 minutes yet?
Yes.
Just whatever you need.
Okay, I think that's good for now. I'll save the rest for questions.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Like I say, I'm Sister Mary Joseph, and since I'm in the middle, I'll go next. My vocation story is starting off in the very beginning. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. So if it seems like I have a lisp or a hiccup or anything like that, that's my Southern roots. And so I will try to enunciate because we like to slide. When I was at home, living at home and working, I decided that I liked the money more than anything. So I was working, and I remember going by a church and saying to Jesus, not today, maybe tomorrow, or maybe next Sunday. And that was the turning point because a couple of weeks later, I just so happened to be at a band concert, and I was there for a reason, and that was for a guy. And so I was going down this hill. It rained the night before, so the hill was kind of slippery, and so my shoes were not gripping. And so I fell down the hill, literally, and I had a St. Paul moment because my leg got caught behind me and I could hear it break. And so it broke completely, and so I had to be on bed rest for 3 months. And like Sister said, she had that profound moment where Jesus was actually speaking to her. And I just remember laying in the bed. The thought was, who's first? And I said, me, myself, and I, and then Jesus. And so I realized that that was an unbalance. And so I said, well, Jesus, if you help me to heal, I did the bargaining. I said, Jesus, if you help me to heal quickly, then I'll put you back first. And so the doctors were amazed that I was like clomping around on crutches, trying to get back. And so when I did, the first thing I did was go to Sunday Mass. And so I've been going to Sunday Mass ever since. One of our child church, Our Lady Queen of Angels, also had Our Lady Queen of Mercy, also had an adoration chapel. And at that adoration chapel, they was looking for donors at the 2:30 to 3:30 in the morning hours. So I volunteered to do that. It was my sacrifice and thanksgiving to God for all that he did for me. So I was faithful to my little hour, and there was a lady that was there with me also who was always prostrating, and that fascinated me, that, her prostrating was giving her all to God. And so I decided to do that too, just to offer it up to Jesus. But in the meantime, I was still praying to meet a nice guy. I knew how many kids I was going to have. At the time, it was 2.5, but you can't have 2.5 kids. You either have 2 or 3. And so a nice picket fence, and I was fascinated by the Lamborghinis at the time. So I was like, I want a Lamborghini. So, so I was always putting that forth to Jesus. I never thought about religious life until one day at noon mass, this guy comes up to me and he says, wow, you don't wear the habit. And I said, no. He said, why not? I said, because I'm not a religious sister. And he says, well, why not that? Why you're not a religious sister? I said, no, sir, I'm paying for that nice man, that nice car, and that nice big fence. He said, okay. And I left it at that, left me alone so I could continue to pray. Then another person came up. Well, have you thought about religious life? I'm like, no, I'm praying for that nice man, that nice car, and that nice big fence. And so people just all of a sudden were just asking me, well, have you ever thought about it? So I said, okay, Lord, I'll make a bargain with you. I'll give you a year, and that's it. Then you provide that nice man, that nice car, and a nice big fence. So on the TV, EWTN, which is stationed down in Alabama, they had the final vows of Sister Agnes. And I was just so happened to turn it on, and I saw her final vows. And I think that's when St. Francis says, I can get you that away. And so I watched as she prostrated on the ground, and to give her, she was doing her final vows, they put the ring on and everything, and I thought, oh, well, this religious life is not so bad. I think I want to do that. And so Sister Agnes, when she made her final vows, impressed upon me. That's when I found out about I knew about St. Francis because I went to Catholic grade schools. I said, well, I think I can join that order. So I did write to Mother Angelica, and I got to meet Sister Raphael. And Sister Raphael talked to me about vocations and what it means, because I thought I really had a contemplative vocation, which is adoration of Jesus the whole time, all day long, and she looked at me and we were conversing, and she says, you might have a vocation, but it's definitely not to the community, contemplative life. And I said, oh, why not? She says, you talk too much. So I'll never be able to be quiet enough to listen. So I said, okay. So she gave me a list of all the religious communities that was Franciscan, and our community was on it. I was specifically looking for one for the perpetual adoration, because that's where I fell in love with Jesus, was in front of the Blessed Sacrament. So I went to see our sisters, and I like for symbols. I like to look at symbols, how God interacts with me. And on our grotto was this beautiful purple clematis, was cascading down from the grotto. And at the time, that was one of my favorite flowers that was in bloom. And I says, oh, I'm in trouble. And so I went and I got to meet the sisters. Their Franciscan joy was just beautiful to see. And I experienced that joy. So I thought, wow, enter religious life. And I did. I entered our community for 2 years, and then I left because I wasn't settled. And then I lived in Chicago, and God was never far from me. He was always with me. I went to St. Philip Neri and the church, and then all of a sudden, I knew my time was up when one of the parishioners came up to me, Mary Ann. She says, well, have you thought about religious life again? And so I knew it was time to think about it again. So I started talking to Sister Cheryl, and we were talking about vocations in general, because I knew that you can be a secular Franciscan, and I knew that part. And Sister Cheryl says, there's lots of people come to this vocation awareness thing. So I did, but guess what? I was the only human being there. And I said, interesting. And so it happened again. I was the only one there. And then finally, Sister Cheryl says, well, have you ever thought about coming back to us? And so I said, no, not really. I did give God that year. And it seems like the man that's going to be in my life is him. And so we got to talking, and then that's how I ended up back into our community. And it's been 23 years. So it's sticking, like Sister said, thanks be to God that I have my vocation and my sisters. And they're teaching me how to grow in love in the Franciscan way. And St. Francis, after going through St. Clair and her total abandonment to divine providence, when she got her hair cut off, she knew that was it. I, for myself, when I saw that lady prostrate on the ground in front of Jesus to give my all, that's when I knew that that's the kind of life that I wanted to live. And so I always look for joy. It reminds me of abandonment. And so that's why I chose St. Francis.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So my story's college also, but I went for a boy. And actually, it's the boy that I'm married to now. But when I grew up Catholic, and I grew up in a home that was very strict. So not only did you go to church every Sunday, but you wore your Sunday best. So I remember clearly the very first time I wore jeans to Mass. I was 19, and I thought I was breaking all the rules, but I survived. So I transferred to St. Mary's College, which is Holy Cross College up the road, really, in South Bend. And I transferred as a junior. And it's very small, and I did not have a lot of friends because friend groups were established first year and second year. And so I was considering transferring again. And one day I was in our main classroom building and I went to the auditorium, and as I walked in, I saw this giant cross and I felt peace. And then I recognized each one of the classrooms had this cross, and I didn't know anything about it. And because I was new to the institution and didn't have a lot of friends, I didn't ask anyone about it. I just knew when I had challenges, that's where I would go, was to our classroom building. And I was there sometimes till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. It helped me get through school. Graduated and moved back home, went to graduate school. Didn't think much about this cross. Got married, moved to Texas, which is very far away from Chicago. And I got very involved in the church. And at the end of our first year, we got a thank you gift. And it was a tiny Franciscan cross, San Damiano cross. Still didn't know anything about it. And I went, that used to be important to me. And proceeded to take it home and put it in the drawer. Didn't think about it again. Then we came here in 2005, I believe. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing this cross everywhere. And I had the pleasure to meet Sister Anita. And she started talking to me about the San Damiano cross. So it was kind of making sense. And then the following year, I was blessed to be selected to attend pilgrimage with the university. And I don't know how it is now, but at that time when you were selected and your name was announced, everyone that went to pilgrimage before you came to you to tell you about this wonderful life-changing experience that you were going to have. 3, 4, or 5 people a day. So, because most of you know that I'm a perfectionist and want everything to happen just so, I was scared that I was not going to have this life-changing experience. So I went and I didn't. And so I was, I did it wrong. And what are the sisters going to think? I wasted this money. And 3 months after we returned, I was actually at a mass honoring a couple of the sisters who had met a Jubilee mark. And I was standing in line to get food, of all things. And there was a woman in front of me, and her sister, biological sister, was behind me. And they both said at the same time, you ought to come look at our fraternity. And I said, no, thanks, but no, this isn't what I am meant to do. And that evening when I got home, I turned on the TV and I went to EWTN. And as I was watching, I heard the internal voice say, this is what you need to do. This is who you are. So after 20 plus years of Francis Sinclair screaming at me, I finally got it. So I went to a couple of fraternity meetings and I said, okay, this is what I want to do. So I went through the early rites, and then our minister at the time said, we want to fast track you since you work at the university. And I said, no, I want to go through all the steps. And it was then that I learned a lot about St. Clair, and I realized St. Clair was one of the most radical people that I ever got to meet, and I wanted to be that. Now, the backstory is when I was in high school, I fell away from the church. So when I got to college, my mom used to tell people that I became normal because I had outlandish hair and everything else. So by making this commitment, I realized who I needed to be. And it was something that was actually really scary for my family. When I told my mom that I was going to become a secular Franciscan and I was going to make this profession, she said, are you getting divorced? Are you joining? And I said, no. So then I had to explain it, but they didn't have much experience. Growing up, nuns and priests were way up here, and you didn't talk to them unless they talked to you. So for her, thinking about me joining an order, it was something that was beyond her comprehension. But 14 years later, everybody recognizes this is who I am. And part of it is the relational pieces. Church used to be for me following the rules. I don't follow the rules very well, but most of you who know me know that. But this is the place that I need to be. Claire has brought me here, and I hope she'll keep me here. So that's my story. want to open it up to you. Ask us your questions.
Can I ask a quick question? If the three of you can address what it means to be Franciscan in your day-to-day interaction with everyone, students, faculty, staff, anyone on campus here.
I'll start. I think when I first started here, I was in academic support and, well, teaching and then academic support. So I spent a lot of time with students who were struggling. And then as I moved to different positions, I would sometimes work with students who came to see me because of not so happy reasons. And I think in my previous experience, it was, for me, it was more about, okay, let's do this, let's get things done, let's check off the boxes. And now that I'm here, I'm not so worried about the boxes and what things need to get done. I want to work with the student, the human person that's in front of me. And I think that's the same with my colleagues. As a supervisor, it can be really easy to write the evaluation and, this is going well, this isn't, fix this, do that. And that's not who I am anymore. I really want to get to know, and some of the people that have reported to me hopefully can see that and recognize it, but I care more about who you are than what boxes I check.
There's a story of St. Francis where he was fasting and he had asked all the brothers to fast, so to not eat for an extended period of time. And one of the brothers was really struggling with that and was crying out at night because he needed food. And so what Francis did was he made everyone get up and they had a feast with this brother for this brother who needed it. And so I think kind of actually very similar to what you were just saying, it really is being present to God and letting him be present to you so that you can be present to others and be God's presence for them and with them. And so I think that takes being present in the moment to discern the situation and to know that, yes, the rules are important and they're there for a reason. And there are times when the person in front of you needs something different and their dignity and value and worth in God's eyes is worth you shifting something in your own plan to accommodate and to be present to them in their need. Mm-hmm. So I think that's mainly how I would answer that.
Yeah, and as you continue to read and look into St. Francis, you realize how human he was. I mean, he did stoop down, even though he was spiritually on the highest. He stepped down always to remember the little man, mm-hmm. and that's why he called himself the little friar, because we're small in the eyes of God, and together, that's how we're supposed to bring each other together. Yeah. There's, if you ever get a chance to go to Assisi, on the wall, in the ceiling in his chapel, there's a picture of a friar helping another friar up. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful in the sense that the friar who's, down is way down, but the friar's bending to lift him up. And so I took a picture of that several times, even though it says, no photos. I'm like, this one I like,
And so you broke the rule.
I broke the rule. Rule breakers. So yeah. So yes, always helping the fellow man. I think, and that's the important part about being here on this campus. When I first came to the campus, I was, not that I thought everybody would be rude or just standoffish, but the welcoming that they, each and every one, came to me and welcomed me to the university. That was very uplifting. So yeah.
So I guess my question was, I think that, as far as living out the Franciscan values, that sometimes it can be a bit clearer what that looks like when you're faculty and you're working with students all the time. What do you think are ways to bring out those Franciscan values, embody those Franciscan values when you're in like a staff, a less, not faculty position, but maybe like I'm in admissions or more in marketing or financial aid, ways to bring forth those Franciscan values when you're not in the faculty role?
Mm-hmm. As you were talking, The first thing I think, and that's what St. Francis did, he gave it all to Jesus. So in the morning when you do an offering, just say, Lord, this is for you. This is for your day. It's a way of self-emptying so that you can be available to your coworkers. Yeah, and to the students too, no matter what your job is, because then you put Jesus in the middle of it, and it makes your work not harder but easier because you know you're doing it for him. And that's what St. Francis was, all about giving God the glory. I mean, even the smallest piece of paper he'll pick up reverently because it might have God's word on it. So that's why I see it.
One thing that I've done in both the faculty role and non-faculty role is pray for my students. When I was in what we now call ACDC, I had a list of students that I saw regularly, but I wasn't their instructor. I was an advisor or someone that, just that was their accountability person, and to pray for them every day. After a few weeks in the semester, it was easy, but the first couple of weeks I had to look at names every day and respect them and meet them where they are. Mm-hmm. And I mean, with admissions, you have a list of students that you follow, so that, maybe something, and just being present, like sisters have said, I think that makes a difference.
Thank you.
Looking online?
Yes, no questions so far.
We started to hint at it a little. How is Franciscanism different from the other orders, the other Catholic orders? If you were asked that, I know you'd be being asked to generalize.
Yeah, and I think so. Just for instance, the Dominicans have an O.P. at the end of their name. We have OSF, Order of St. Francis. They have OP, which stands for Order of Preachers. And so for them, they were founded as a preaching order, right? So that the preaching, that's why the typically Dominicans have the stereotype, I guess, of being intellectual, right? Because they had to be well educated so that they could go out and preach the truth to people. So I think a lot of it has to do with your founding, the founding of the order, and there's several others. But I would say for Franciscan, and then specifically for our community, it is really that relational. Francis prayed at the very beginning for brothers. Mm-hmm. That was his first prayer. Mm-hmm. When he went and started to rebuild the Church of San Damiano, he prayed for brothers to join him. He prayed that the Lord would gather people around him to accomplish the same mission. So for us, it's doing it together. That's why typically, like a sister, we're not assigned to an apostolate or to a place by ourselves, because we're together in our community. We're sisters first. So, and you need another person to be a sister too. Right. So it's really that relational aspect that's very different, because obviously Francis would go up the mountain and spend long times in contemplative prayer, but then he would always come back down, right? And so there's orders that go up the mountain and stay there. Mm-hmm. And those orders are beautiful as well. But his particular call was go up the mountain, be with the Lord, and come back and share that with the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, community was very important for him, in a sense. And I know that was one of my prayers too, that I have sisters to pray with. I mean, you can be a secular Franciscan out in the world and still, but I felt called to do it with a bunch of women and community, living in a community. So. Yeah.
I have a question. So are you all required to change your name from your given name to a saint name, and what's that process, and how did you make that decision?
No, we don't have to change our name. We are giving the opportunity and the grace to pray about 3 names, and you submit 3 names to the provincial, and she and her council then pray to the Holy Spirit, and then that's the name that is given to you. So you do have some say in that. I just remember for me, in my case, I had the name. You had to write explanation of why you want the name. So my first name was Benedicta. It means God's blessing. God has blessed me. And I wrote a full page about Benedicta, why I should have that name. I am not Sister Benedicta. As you can see, I'm Sister Mary Joseph. And so I put that on my first list, my first, and I said, okay. And then I went to an older sister, and I was wondering what the third name would be. And so she says, Mary Joseph. And I said, oh, Mary Joseph? Okay. So on my little paper, I put down that one sentence. An older sister thought Mary Joseph would fit me just fine. That was my last one. And then my given name that my mom and dad gave me was my second choice. And so when I put my name choices underneath the statue of St. Joseph, because he's always been there for me. So when Sister Blanche, who was the provincial at the time, says, your name will be Sister Mary Joseph, I went, what? I had a letter on Benedicta. So it might not be your first choice, but they do take that into consideration, your name choices. But yeah. So yeah. Did I answer your question? Yeah. So they pray about it and then they choose. In fact, it's been a long time since they had male names in our community. They've always been just females. So my class was the first class to bring back the male added to their names. But yeah. Good question.
I guess I'll go. I have lots of questions because I'm not Catholic, but I did graduate from here. So it's interesting that I graduated from here and I had sisters for professors, but back then the theology classes that you require now were not required. Like when I went, you had to take a religion class, but it could be any religion class. Oh. So I didn't really learn that much about the Franciscan tradition when I was a student. And so now I'm learning more about it now that I've been hired as faculty. So I go to Sister Anita and she's given me a book to read. So I read about St. Francis's life and the times that he lived in. So I'm just kind of curious, as someone who isn't Catholic, do you have, I'm assuming that the secular Franciscan, you still need to be Catholic to be secular Franciscan. So, are there other things, because I love St. Francis, I just think, and I want to read about Claire next, but what are the things that non-Catholics can do to further embrace the Franciscan mission?
That is a very good question.
Because I love the mission. I am 100% in support. But like I said earlier, I do go to an Orthodox church, so I don't know that I'll be joining the Catholic Church, but I totally support Catholicism and the mission and everything like that.
Yeah.
I guess for me, when you asked the question, I thought, well, live out the values.
Just live out the values.
But because I know you already do that. I think the more you live out the values and show that to other people, I think that will go a long way. And being in relationship with the sisters and other folks here, and that's one way. I don't know.
Yeah, you're part of our Franciscan family here. Yeah, and there is a different, obviously, as a Catholic, there's a different element, for us, then a major focus is the Eucharist, which is a non-Catholic, that's not really present. But I would even say just honoring sacred time in whatever way that means for you. Because, like I said, Francis was always up the mountain, down the mountain, right? So to take that time even in your day to establish that pattern of going up the mountain to be with the Lord and then coming back down, even in the middle of the workday.
And, and St. Francis also embraced the leper. And I think that sometimes we don't embrace the leper even within ourselves, but for our fellow men, sitting with someone that you might not really care for. St. Francis actually put himself out there. That's joining in the Franciscan because he loved his brethren. Even ones who he actually was persecuted by his own friars. So embracing those as well is a Franciscan value that we don't talk about as much either.
Mm-hmm.
So learning to turn the other cheek. Yeah.
Is the name of your order that's usually in Cleveland? Each time I think about it, because Sisters of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration, and I begin to think about it that in our parish, they set time for us to come for adoration, but your order goes by the name Perpetual Adoration. So I begin to wonder how do you balance your life when you are in perpetual adoration? And some of you who are not at the headquarters of the order in Mishawaka, you know, how do you practice that in your life?
Yeah, it is. So yeah, for those who don't know it, our mother house in Mishawaka, Indiana, that's where we actually have a 24/7 perpetual adoration chapel where there are always 24/7 two sisters praying every hour. They rotate every hour and they go in there and pray, and they pray for the intentions of all of you. And there's a place on our website where you can go and submit your intentions, and they'll put them in that chapel. And so so there they have that. And so it is a little bit, I mean, I love being here. It is a little bit of a sacrifice when I know that we don't have that perpetual adoration chapel here, because I do love that so much. But I know for me and the sisters here, we all do our daily holy hour, and then that kind of, you can't have ceaseless adoration, this adoration of the Lord, if you never actually spend time with him. So it's that foundation of spending time with him and letting him speak to your heart, so that when you go out, you're taking him with you and he's present with you on your journey through the day. But yeah, you're right. It is at our mother house where we have the perpetual adoration chapel. Thankfully, there are two in town here, but
yes, there are. And then on Sunday, not Sunday, Sunday we have Jesus exposed in our chapel. So we do our adoration during that time as a community. During that time as well. And then when we go back to the mother house, we plug in as soon as, well, let me say, I said because I can't speak for the other sisters, but I know she does too, but I plug in as soon as I can and sign up for my hour of adoration and help with that apostolate when I'm there. So like in July, when they have the Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis, I know I've been asked to come home to help with the apostolate. So yeah, like she said, it's a little different when we're out on mission. But
I don't know if the chapel's open right now.
it is.
Okay, because in the past, when you go to the mother house, make sure you go to the adoration chapel. It is one of the most peaceful places on earth. I really believe that. I really think everyone should go.
So, how do you go?
Oh, good question. So Sister Maria Gemma is supposed to be scheduling an employee pilgrimage to the mother house. And whenever she gets that scheduled, she'd be happy to let you know. Yeah, we do take a couple of handfuls of people up usually it's May. My problem is I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks this May. So I don't know when it's going to be. But once I set it, we'll put an invitation out and people can sign up to come with us.
And how does that usually work when you do that?
So we'll take you up to the mother house. We'll have a tour of the convent. We'll give you some time for prayer, some time to walk the grounds, and yes, a tour and just some history and
and we feed you.
Yeah, we feed you. Time with the sisters.
Yeah. And it's funny, our other apostolate, which is in healthcare, we have that they come up too when they have an opportunity. So, it's nice to see where the roots are.
Yeah, that would be really, I would find that really interesting, especially since I graduated from here and, you know, I know so many, well, not so many, but I knew some of the sisters that used to teach here.
One year, I took a group of students. I think we had just changed to Engage, but then COVID hit, so we didn't get to continue that.
Oh, so it was going to be part of their Engage class?
Well, for my
Your
class.
Engage class.
Yeah, so we just went the one semester.
Well, that's neat.
That was 2018, I think.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on 10 minutes till because, and we were going to end at 10 minutes till because that would give people who have to get back to their classes that they're teaching at 1 o'clock to go.
Great.
So
Yeah, so thank you for having us.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much
You're welcome.
for this. It's been wonderful.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.